What's really exciting about these guys is that they represent two sides of payments. You know, Tony with BitPay, they just have a massive number of merchants that are accepting Bitcoin payments. On the other side, with Unlimint, what they're building is a new solution that allows people to buy Bitcoin. So it's going to be very interesting to see the two different perspectives. But just to get started, would each of you please introduce what you're doing so the audience has a little bit more context?
I guess I'll go first. Thank you, Ken. I'm Tony Gallippi. I'm one of the co-founders of BitPay. We were started in 2011, so we've been in Bitcoin for 12 years. And we are facing the mission of trying to get merchants to adopt Bitcoin as a form of payment. And we started off with some very primitive, web widgets and web plugins, and we've obviously made the tools a lot better from there. But we've got mainstream merchants like Newegg for electronics, AT&T, Microsoft, and then even some luxury brands like Gucci and Ralph Lauren.
Awesome. Jack?
Awesome. Hey, guys. I'm Jack. I am currently head of crypto at Unlimint, which is a payment company that's been around for 15 years. We're now building kind of the crypto stack on top of the payment stack for fiat on and off ramping. I was also a first employee at Wire, which is a U.S. fiat on ramp, like more Gen 1 back in like 2017, where we use our money services business and MTLs in the U.S. to basically help different dApps and wallets with like fiat on and off ramping. So now the reason why I came over here is because it made more sense to build a fiat on-ramp on top of a payment company so that you kind of get one layer down for like better conversion rates, better fees and stuff like that for, user onboarding. Yeah.
Great. So one of the most interesting things that's been happening at this conference has been the debate of ordinals and BRC20. You're clogging up the blockchain space. So the big argument against that has been that, there are people in El Salvador and the developing world, they want to make payments, and now they see a $25 fee to spend Bitcoin because people want to put a wizard on the blockchain, right? So you guys are on the ground. You saw what happened over the last few weeks with the Bitcoin fees spiking. How did you guys deal with that?
Yeah, I can start. So this is not the first time that we've seen periods of congestion on the Bitcoin network. Probably the most notable was in 2017, which correlated to the price peak. And at the time, the users really struggled because their transactions were getting stuck in the mempool, and they were helpless to do anything. They were waiting days, if not a week or more, to get their transaction confirmed. And because the wallets and the ecosystem didn't really have good fee estimations at that point. But what you've seen now is that if you have a similar period of congestion, the network seemed to operate pretty good. You had a little bit of accumulation in the mempool, but for the most part, we didn't have failed payments. We didn't get a flood of lots of support tickets. People saw the fee market adjusted as it should, and they either chose to maybe delay the purchase or pay a different way. So we did see a little bit of adjustment of user behavior, but nowhere near I think the problems that you had the last time this happened.
Yeah, I think Tony's users are probably more crypto native who already has an expectation with what they're doing when they're paying with the crypto, right? Whereas on my side, we're onboarding like new users for the first time a lot of times. We definitely saw like more support tickets because transactions get stuck. Instead of getting their coins in like 10 minutes, they're getting it in like an hour or 2 hours sometimes, and they send us some support tickets, right? And also, if you're like buying $50 of Bitcoin and you're paying $4 in fees, or sometimes $20 in fees now, suddenly it doesn't make sense on the on-ramp side of things. But I mean, generally speaking, I think these things are going to happen, and it's going to push transactions to Lightning or Layer 2s on Bitcoin. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, so that gets to my next point here. It's like this is just the beginning. We have now seen Taproot. We are now seeing new assets being built on Bitcoin, and we've been hearing over the last few days how so many new organizations will be building, and there's going to be such demand for Bitcoin block space. What do we do in a world if we have this perpetually high fees and gradually increasing fees over time? How do your products change? How do we continue payments here? Does it all get pushed to second layers? Are there other interesting solutions you guys are excited about? Tony?
Yeah, I guess I can start on this one again. I do think that there's probably multiple use cases for the Bitcoin blockchain. I think that store of value and payments is one use case. Fungible tokens are another use case. We see that on other chains with stable coins. They tend to be pretty popular. At BitPay, about 20% of our business are people paying with stable coins. So we see them more used in business-to-business transactions. They have a higher typical payment value than a Bitcoin transaction. So different use case. And then also non-fungible tokens. I think that's an interesting use case. Maybe not the implementation or the way they're being used today, but for me, I would like something extremely valuable to me, like the deed to my property, the title to my car, my will, something that needs to survive for decades or generations. I would want that on the most secure blockchain possible, and that would be Bitcoin. We need to do that in a way that your wallet is not actually or accidentally going to spend it, that your wallet can identify that this UTXO has something special about it, and don't spend your house when you're trying to buy a cup of coffee. But I do think that in the long run, there will be multiple use cases for the Bitcoin blockchain. And Bitcoin is not the first chain that has seen popularity and congestion due to multiple use cases. So maybe there are some lessons to be learned at how other blockchains like Ethereum have solved for this. Today there are multiple viable layer 2 solutions on top of the Ethereum blockchain, and they're starting to specialize in certain things. Gaming and NFTs are on one chain, and DeFi is kind of congregating on another chain. Nobody's setting the rules. It's just the communities are kind of self-organizing where it makes sense. So maybe something with Bitcoin would make sense. I think that there's already multiple layer 2s on top of Bitcoin. There probably will be more. And you have to find a use case where a community finds value in one of those layer 2s.
I mean, like, to expound on that a bit, the history lesson here is there was a bunch of ghost chain, wasteland chains in 2018 on Ethereum that saw no activity, that was there, but nobody was using it. And then DeFi summer happened in 2020, and NFT happened, and suddenly Ethereum got super congested, and people started moving to all L1s and L2s. And now in 2022, 2023, those ghost chains are no longer ghost chains. It's actually like activity on them, right? In the same way, analogically here for Bitcoin is like, we're starting to see more developer interest in Bitcoin for the first time in a very long time, right? Like where other developers in other ecosystems are saying, hey, what is this BRC20? What is this ordinals? What is this ORC20 protocol? And Lightning Labs, with the Taproot assets, or even some of the OG kind of side chains like RSK and like Omni, and those things kind of come to the forefront from like developer, builder, operator standpoint. There's only so many Bitcoin wallets. If you look at the amount of like Ethereum wallets versus Bitcoin wallets and the UX between the two, like there are some things to be learned from the Ethereum ecosystem about wallet UX that can be carried over here to the Bitcoin ecosystem to make it easier to adopt the next wave of users, right? So in that sense, I think the history here matters, and it's very exciting to see like more builder, operator, developers get into the space. But at the same time, it shouldn't encroach into the layer 1 block space too much, right? It's like saying you have gold that is mainly this monetary application, but you have some like industrial applications of gold in different industries that you use it for hardware and whatever. So, but if those industrial applications overtook the use case of the original use case of gold, then that would be like an attack on Bitcoin. That wouldn't be good, right? And so as we're arriving at newer like scaling solutions, if we can use that layer 1 block space consciously, instead of all this ordinals and BRC20 stuff, like you can move it to some kind of layer 2 and just put the the proof in the hash, then I think that's like the trade-off there is worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of getting pushed to layer 2s, Tony, last year at the Bitcoin conference, you guys announced that BitPay supports Lightning Network. So what have you seen over the past year in the trends there?
Yeah, that's right. At this show last year, we announced Lightning support for all of our merchants. And now we've got a year's worth of data. And we can see some interesting trends. We've done almost $1 million worth of Lightning payments, about 13,000 transactions, individual transactions. So the average Lightning payment is about $70, $71. Compare that to our average Bitcoin payment, which is maybe $700, so it's about 1/10 the price. So if the goal for Lightning is to create a more viable payment method for lower cost and lower value payments, I think it's worked. Some of our more popular merchants are in the internet VPN space. Gift cards are popular. We've gotten payments from maybe 15 or 20 different wallets I think Cash App is a popular wallet. We get payments from Strike, Wallet of Satoshi, a few others. So we can see which wallets people are using, how the payments are coming in. And overall, we've seen it grow. Like the first month that we added Lightning, it was like less than 0.5% of our volumes. Last month in April, it was over 1%, almost 1.5%. So we have seen people start to use it more and more. Again, it's serving a use case of lower value payments.
Great. And Jack, I think what we've seen a trend in corporations, a trend in a lot of companies creating on-ramps, right? And with you guys coming on the scene, it's very interesting. You have MoonPay, you have Wire, you have these companies that have built on-ramps. But you guys are kind of the first one that was a traditional Web 2 company that entered this space to say, hey, we're going to build something here to on-ramp. What advantage do you guys see in entering this market versus those existing players? That, is there some benefit that you can provide to customers, to business partners, because you have that Web 2 experience, you're coming from that different approach?
Yeah, I think the first generation of on-ramps, it was necessary. They did a good service to the industry at that time in 2017 to 2020. But at the same time, ultimately they were all crypto startups as relayers that was built on top of like a WorldPay or like a Checkout. So you can think of it as like the difference between the node operators versus the kind of the relayers on top, right? So for us as a principal member of Visa, MasterCard, and JCP, all these payment networks, and not just for like card networks, but like local bank transfers or e-wallets in APAC, right, or cash networks in LATAM. For us to have already built up all that kind of Web 2 payment infrastructure over the past 15 years, for me, it made sense to come here at this shop to build an on-ramp in the long run. And also, you're not as like susceptible to the macroeconomics of like bear runs or bull runs and bear markets, right? Because if you're only an on-ramp, then you make a lot of money doing a lot of volume for like a year and a half, and then you have to kind of cut costs and cut staff for like the next 2.5 years. It's just not as reliable, right? Whereas if you're a traditional payment processor, you have all this vast portfolio of different types of merchants, e-commerce and SaaS subscriptions, and scale gaming or like regulated gambling, whatever it might be, and you're just not as reliant on the crypto division of my team to survive as a business. Right? So from a counterparty risk standpoint, you have like a longer kind of duration to just do this very well, offer a durable, good service, and continue building. I think of it as like money Legos. Like we do this one thing for fiat on and off ramps, like stablecoin or Lightning connectivity, and we're connecting like Web 2 to Web 3. You can think of us as like a bridge, right? Like we're just bridging value from a bank account to a crypto wallet, right? And there's you're going from like Visa to Ethereum or like MasterCard to Lightning, right? So I think of us as connecting like 1,000 private payment networks to like 1,000 blockchain networks. And in that sense, we are agnostic. But at the same time, I personally have, always been a Bitcoin maxi who is somewhat Ethereum sympathizing because there's some good tech happening there to learn from. It's just like the roll-up stuff. Like a lot of the roll-up, like technical deep tech developers, they are building roll-ups on Ethereum. How do you get them over to Bitcoin to help Bitcoin to scale, right? And this oil and water, but for us, we are going to be here for a very long time, building fiat on and off ramps. And as a principal member, you're just one layer down, so you have more read and write access into Visa or other networks for analytics, data analytics that gives you better conversion rates. Obviously, the fees are lower because you're just one layer down. So roughly, it converts into better conversion rates, like wider coverage and lower fees, which is good for the consumers and our partners. Yeah.
Yeah, so now you guys, you've just recently introduced your solution to the market, but Tony, BitPay has been around for a long time, and Jack, you mentioned bull market, bear market. I'm really interested, Tony, if you could walk us through an example of a company that you've onboarded, because there may be an enterprise here in the stage today that say, hey, what does it take for me to accept Bitcoin in my company? What does that process look like? You recently onboarded Gucci, huge accomplishment in the space. Would really love to hear about that process of onboarding them, maybe from their perspective, right? So you can kind of, someone in the audience can identify. And then what other trends are you seeing, right? We're in the crypto winter, the Bitcoin winter right now. Do we see kind of a lull in companies that are saying, hey, I want to accept Bitcoin payments, right? What is that looking like? And, does it typically follow the market?
Yeah, a couple of questions there. I guess I'll answer the last one first. Certainly, the news cycle tends to follow our activity. Our phone rings more when Bitcoin is in the news more. And when it's quieter, we're quieter. So we have an enterprise sales team that then goes to work doing more outbound work. A company like Gucci, they're interested in the demographic of Bitcoiners, right? It's a younger, more affluent, more tech-savvy demographic that they want. And they see, obviously, there's multiple places where they could get the demographic, but they see crypto as one opportunity. So they started with a pilot maybe a little bit less than a year ago in just 5 stores. Miami was one of the pilot stores, actually. Las Vegas, LA, Atlanta, and New York, I think, were the 5. And they set it up just on a tablet, on an iPad. So if you're in the store and you want to shop and check out with Bitcoin, you can. And you can do that right from the tablet. So with an in-person transaction, they are going to wait for a confirmation on the payment. So usually if you're shopping at Gucci, you're probably not in a rush. You can wait the 10 minutes. Some of the other coins that they accept confirm a little faster, but that's the way it works. And we've seen some pretty decent volume from those guys. Some people go on some pretty decent shopping sprees. So they're interested in some of those customers that want to spend a lot of money on fashion. Luxury goods as a general category have been a big growth area for us. We've got watch companies like Tag and Hublot. We have a new relationship now just announced within the last month with Ralph Lauren. They've got a new store here in the Miami Design District that they're trying to make into a technology store, and they're piloting Bitcoin payments in that store. So much like Gucci kind of started, but now Gucci has rolled it out to every store nationwide, and they also want to expand international. So from their perspective, they're looking at it for the demographics. They do it on an iPad, so it doesn't have to integrate with their point of sale, which is much easier. That's not our typical merchant. Most of our merchants are e-commerce merchants, companies like Newegg, AT&T, where they're going to integrate into their website. And we're going to be a payment option, just like credit cards, PayPal, BitPay will be listed there. So the in-person is a different use case, but they were happy with it, and they expanded it.
What do you see in terms of the excitement? Are there a lot of, I imagine last year you had companies beating down your door to start accepting payments, and this year maybe they're like, well, that's going to go, we're going to push that out a couple of years, right? I mean, what type of reactions are you seeing?
We're definitely seeing, I'd say, a slowdown in the inbound requests. A lot of the stuff that we're onboarding now actually started maybe a year or so ago, because it does take that long for some of these larger organizations to get it approved. And maybe they've got to prioritize some dev work on their side to get it done, and they may have to wait for some time slot to do it. So there's maybe a, 6 to 12 month typical sales cycle for some of this stuff. So some of the things that are going live now actually started during some of the bull run in 2021.
Gotcha. So we have just a couple of minutes left. I kind of want to get a final thought from each of you on, over the next few years, we'll be back here, we'll be talking about payments. What are some of the things that you're most excited about? Maybe a problem you think we'll be facing, a solution that we'll need to see. What's something we're going to be talking about at some point in the next few years that the audience may not be aware of? Jack, we'll start with you.
I was listening to this Twitter space with a bunch of Chinese exchanges and miners. They were talking in Chinese about this new opportunity with BRC20s and all these things happening. And I'm not calling it collusion, but they're discussing what they want to do, kind of like what they did in 2016 with ERC20s, right? To kind of pump and dump all these new coins into Bitcoin. So I think that we'll start seeing that in the next year or two. I think we should do that responsibly, and instead of putting it on layer 1, if we can put it on layer 2, so it doesn't actually congest, blockchain, the block space, with a bunch of ordinals and BRC20 tokens at layer 1. If we can just put the proofs there and roll it up onto layer 1, that would be a responsible development of the ecosystem. But either way, that's kind of happening, and for better or worse, it's happening. And I'm personally pretty excited for it because of the amount of developer attention we get. We need builders to build the future, right? Like it's not that you build it and they will come. It's you just need builders to build secure, good products, so that there's a number of products out there for consumers to be able to use. So, in generally speaking, I think that that's a good thing, that we're getting more developer interest in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the ZK rollups are probably a layer 2 that a few years from now will probably surpass all the layer 2s that currently exist for Bitcoin. And that could provide some real scalability in a way that makes economic sense and better usability. So you're starting to see that on other chains that are also facing congestion and popularity with multiple use cases competing for the same space. Bitcoin is not new in that regard. So maybe there's things to be learned there, but I do think that if you were to ask where we're going to be a few years from now, there will be probably multiple viable layer 2s, and I would probably say that roll-ups would probably be one of the dominant ones.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Please give our panelists a round of applause.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.